Hi everyone, and welcome to Forest.chat, where we talk about individual endeavours in West Australia, what it takes, what it means, and how you do it. I've managed to take over the reins today. I'm your host, Caroline Vandermeer, and today we're going to talk to Paul, who normally runs this show, about being a podcaster, because he's recently wants to share his knowledge about what it takes to be in charge of the microphone. Paul listens to podcasts when no one else is around. That usually means while driving or walking. Initially, he listened to podcasts about photography, storytelling, grammar, computers, and software. Most recently, he's listening to podcasts by people he knows, like Perth-based Damien Porter, Straight Talk, local Bunbury podcaster Jake Kerr's Black Ink, and Donnybrook-based Barry Green's Radio WA. Paul started podcasting in April 2024 with Forest.chat podcast. Welcome to Forest.chat, Paul.
Thank you, Caroline. I'm really glad to be here. And we're trying something different today. And if somebody else wants to have a go at hosting a show, I'm open to that too. It is a little bit different being on the other side of the interview. So I'm looking forward to sharing my experience and of being a podcaster.
Paul, the internet is awash with podcasts of all genres and topics. What sort of podcast is Forest.chat?
Well, Forest.chat is an interview-based podcast, and we have guests come on and answer questions based around three themes. The first theme is, what does it take? The second is what it means. And the third is how you do it. So when we look at the first question, guests get to share what they do and what their strengths are and their characteristics that enable them to do what it is that they do. And that's a really important thing for people to know about people, because I think it's really good that people know that all sorts of people can do all sorts of things. And then we go on and talk about what is the impact. So what is the meaning of what they're doing? And how does it actually affect the person, and how does it affect society, and how does it affect the person's family? And then we finish off with some hints and tricks and ideas about how someone else might follow them in that endeavour.
Fantastic. That sounds like a really great thing and really motivating for people to hear about people doing things that they maybe haven't thought about doing.
Yes, absolutely. And part of that is about having a medium to share that with other people so that people can actually find out just what on earth is going on, what it takes, and how you get in and have a go at something that maybe you haven't been exposed to before.
And it's sort of like ordinary people doing extraordinary things.
It is, and ordinary people do extraordinary things. It's quite amazing.
Yep, and that's very motivating for people, right?
You bet.
Yeah, excellent.
So, and it's also an opportunity for people to do some good in the world.
That's great. That's a really positive thing too. I'm sure you must feel very proud of what you've achieved so far.
I am. It's been quite a good journey.
So, Paul, podcasting is popular and it's really exploding in popularity around the world. What does it take for you to be a podcaster?
I was really surprised at just how much it actually does take to do a podcast. Now, I've chosen to do an interview-based podcast, so that adds a whole nother dimension to what goes on. You know, really what it means is that I've had to delve into my interpersonal skills in order to invite guests and actually conduct interviews and listen to people, that sort of thing. And also to think about how other people might be engaged by the podcast. So when I look at how am I promoting the podcast and also how am I advocating for the podcast? Because I'm the only one really to be out there as the primary advocator for the podcast. So if it goes nowhere if I do nothing. So other people can definitely help and they can advocate as well, but it's all coming from one particular point, and I need to lean on my interpersonal skills as they are at the moment and get in and have a go. And that's something that over time that I'll be developing, I guess. So it's one of the things that you do is you do things and learn things, you develop. So, the interpersonal skills, I tend to be the listener rather than the questioner. So, this is a bit of a step outside the box for me. I also engage my language skills. That comes into things like when I have to write descriptions and make up bios, usually from a very short discussion with people. initially, some of the bios are written by the guest, and I found it's probably just as simple to sit down with the guest and go through and create a bio on the spot, actually, when we do the interview. So it's been quite interesting, and it takes a little bit of my language skills in order to make that happen. And also the phrasing of my questions. We'll get a bit onto that in a little while. Also, it takes quite a lot of project management. Automatically see just how many pieces there are in a podcasting puzzle. So the regular things that I'm doing are planning, doing and tracking the progress. So in the planning space, what I'm doing there is I'm determining what the steps are to actually create the podcast. And what is the workflow? So how do I actually take the idea of who I'm going to ask or who I'm going to invite to be a guest and turn that into a finished episode at the end that gets published at 5 a.m. on a Wednesday. And so there's a fair bit of planning to actually get through all of that process, and more bits get added in as we go. I've added a recent bit about having an online calendar, which hopefully will make things easier for people booking times to do interviews. So, and then there's a lot in the doing. I kicked off with the podcast branding, but not only the branding, but also what's the podcast actually going to be about. Initially, I talked about or thought about the name of the podcast and came up with forest.chat and managed to get that as a domain. So that was all well and good. I then had to think about, well, what will be the structure of the podcasts and how will people actually engage? What will they get out of the podcast? So I had to do a fair bit of that sort of work in putting together the podcast branding, and that drives a lot of what else goes on. Then had to organise podcast hosting, so I had to go and look at all different sites, and you've got lots of opportunities to do things very simply. Sometimes they're cheap, sometimes they're not. And typically the cheaper they are, the harder they are to work. So I need to think about, okay, I've got to be in this for the long term. Then I need to choose something that's actually not too hard. Podcast platform that actually does a good amount of the work for me. So that was very important to do that. And then I also had to think about, how do I get the word out about the podcast? And the traditional route is to go on social media, but that didn't ring with me. I don't trust social media to display posts when you put them out and all that sort of thing. You can never tell just what's going to be going on. So I decided to go with email campaigns. So if you want to get the most out of Forest.chat podcast, then the email list that you want to join, and you go to forest.chat to join that list, and that's where you find out the most about the podcast. Then I needed to invite guests and get some recording done and, arrange the flow. So eventually I came up with the three main themes that we have, which we talked about a little bit earlier. And those themes are consistent across all of the episodes, so those main questions. And what's not consistent is the questioning that goes on within that. I often question people about the particular elements that they need to bring into their responses to fill it out and make the response worthwhile to people. So I ask a few questions typically on the way through. And then once you've got the recording in the bag, that's not the end of it. We pre-record these, so there's some editing that needs to be done, and we often have tactical discussions during the podcast and think about, what's the next question and how we're going to respond to that, and so all that stuff gets chopped out. So there's a fair bit of editing there. So if I record like 40 minutes, it might come down to 35 or 30 minutes, something like that, of actual recording. And there may even be, longer recordings come down to be even shorter amounts of time. Then you've got an episode, and, I've probably listened to it then live and then at least twice before I then need to write a description and captions. I don't do the captions manually. I'll get them done automatically, but they are never truly accurate. So I need to listen through again and make sure that the caption file says at least mostly what is actually being said. They tend to be very good at spelling other words, which is funny. Sometimes it's very funny, and sometimes it's just like, oh no, I did it here too. But anyway, and I also need to get an episode image. So I ask the guest for an image, and then I pop the image into a piece of artwork that will promote the show. And if you're looking at this, then you've seen examples of what that looks like. It's got the Forest.chat at the top and a picture and a name and a topic, and then the domain across the bottom. So I need to put that together, and then I need to post that. But I need to post it in a couple of places. Of course, I need to post it on the podcasting platform, but I also need to make a email campaign in the other platform I use for sending out the emails. You can't just send emails out of your inbox because they get blocked as spam everywhere and that sort of thing, especially once the numbers start to increase. On the way through that process, I could have, coming up, I've got 3 interviews planned, and I need to know where each person is in that interview journey, and whether I've got the images and whether I've created the episode image. So I need to be able to track that progress. And I use a spreadsheet for that.
So it sounds like you're very organised and have a lot of skills with project management to keep you on track for keep getting the episodes out on time.
Yes. I think people who know me will, especially who've worked with me, understand that, I don't mind putting in a few dottings of T's and crossing of I's. I certainly see some crossing of I's when I talk through some of these things with people. So that's, yeah.
So what have you found has been some of the challenges that you've faced being a podcaster? Because you're relatively new to the field, and I'm sure there's been quite a lot of growth that you've had to do to start the podcast series, Forest.chat.
Yeah, there's been quite a few things actually that I had an inkling about, but I didn't necessarily or hadn't done. And doing them, you often find things that you need to think about a little bit more, and that takes a little bit of time and effort. I'm not a particularly fast reader, but I've been on heaps of websites looking around, comparing things. So there's been a lot of work in the background to do that. So what I really found the most challenge actually was with my self-confidence and actually getting out and doing this, particularly the whole process of recording a voice and listening back to it, and then understanding or having a better understanding of what I sound like to other people. Then, I understand I need to make things a bit cleaner as far as getting rid of ums and ahs and all those sort of things. So that's quite a big part of my speech. It's a far bigger part of my speech than I thought it was. And it's quite difficult for me to actually get rid of that. I have to think about it all the time when I'm talking.
I think ums and ahs are a natural part of us pausing and trying to think of the next thing to say. And rather than having silence, we often or ah to get our brain functioning again and grab that breath of, oh, what am I supposed to say here? And so it is actually what so many people do is that, okay, they've asked me something and I'm not quite sure where to go here. Okay, yes, now my thoughts are coming into process.
Yeah, it is. It's very much something that we teach ourselves, I think, to do as well. And it's very difficult to unteach yourself doing that. And doing it less, even without eliminating it, doing it less tends to be easier to listen to for other people, because those thinking moments are thinking moments that I have, but a person listening doesn't necessarily have those thinking moments. Mm-hmm. So the filler words have a tendency to get in the way sometimes. So while I'll probably never get rid of all of them, then I do want to get them under control.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I dare say too, sometimes when you're sharing ideas with people do need sometimes that second or few seconds of thinking about what you've just said to integrate it too. So, I wouldn't always be too hard on yourself for those, because, people you're presenting a lot of information about new people that people haven't met before, about new ideas and new concepts. And so sometimes that few seconds you've taken to gather your breath could also be time that they take to, oh, wow, that's a different idea. I hadn't thought about that too.
Yes, yes. That seems to happen naturally because I don't think very quickly on my feet. And I've known that for a long, long time. It's something I have struggled with for a long, long time, and I continue to struggle with it. And I'm not planning to do any live shows because of that. And I'm probably not also planning to do being a announcer at an event or something like that, because I'm quite sure that there'll be too much dead air for the audience, like nothing being said at all.
I think you're very hard on yourself there. I'm sure that, you do a much better job than what you realise. So, yes. So we've talked about what it takes. And after this break, it will be good to look at the difference being a podcaster makes. So podcasting is attractive to people in regenerative media who seek to make change in the world, to change the globalised and corporated nature of the world to one of local communities helping themselves to flourish. Paul, what does being a podcaster mean to you, your family and your community?
Yeah, I love this question. This is one of my favourite parts of doing the podcasts, because it's the difference that people make that makes things so special.
That's true. And, we're here on Earth to be people, not computers and not machines. And that interaction is so important.
Yes, absolutely. So for me, it's been an opportunity to connect with people. We've recently relocated to an area well outside of where we had lived in the past. And there's a need to be a part of the community, and we are building our connections to the community. And this is one way that I'm helping myself build connections between me and the community that I'm now in. And while the focus is around all of Western Australia, there is, to me, a more of a regional type focus. I've interviewed a number of people who are regional. I've interviewed some people from the city as well, which has all been good. And, for me, I'm looking to do, I guess, more from my local area. More people, connecting with more people for interviews from my local area and becoming more a part of the community for myself. The other thing for me is hearing about how people do things and finding new or interesting ways of approaching things in my life. So I'm harvesting, if you like, ideas, and I think my ideal audience would be in the same boat in some ways, in that they're listening to the podcasts and they're going, oh, okay, I never thought about that way, or, oh, I think it would be good if this happened because I heard that on the podcast, that sort of thing. To me, that's an important part of what I get out of it, and I think also I hope that the community gets out of it as well. I've been gaining some skills. My audio recording skills have improved immensely. They're getting better and better. I'm getting more confident, and to me that's been a really good thing. I've learnt a few things about platforms, but I've also been used to learning new platforms, like on the internet and that sort of thing. So it's been really good to do. And hopefully, for me, I'm looking to do some good in the world. There's been a lot of mixed master of all sorts of things going on in the world, and I think I need to do some good in the world. So to me, this is one way of bringing people together, listening to people who are doing some good in the world. So that's one way of me helping to share that.
I think that's a really important thing, because it's very easy for news to be negative and people to get into doom and gloom. And to hear of people doing inspiring things and good things in the world and feeling good about what they've achieved also helps motivate people to do more good.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. They can just get an understanding that what they do can inspire others, and that is a flow-on of good in the world.
And we never know how much something we do or something we say or that smile we give a person can make a difference to that person.
Absolutely, absolutely. I've got a couple of examples that I want to share as well, just in a short while. Now, as far as for my family, I've spent quite a lot of time managing this podcast, doing the research, finding out what on earth I need to do, finding out how to do it, and then getting in and doing it, writing the emails that you get when you join the email list. There's a whole raft of things that needed to happen, and I had to work all of that out. And now there's a constant stream of guests that I'm looking to invite and to record and then to edit and publish. So that's taking quite a bit of time.
From your family point of view, a lot of interest in what you're doing and who you're interviewing. So you're also giving back in that way to them.
Yes, my family are amongst my most loyal listeners.
We need to start somewhere, right?
At this stage, yes, that's right. So, and I hope that, I do things that allow them to remain loyal, but also share the message and bring others in. And then by using the email list, the hope is that the listeners will be loyal listeners who actually are here for a reason and not just numbers on a spreadsheet that aren't doing anything. And then from a community's perspective, I hope my listeners find some hints and tips for improving their own lives. They aren't presented as hints and tips, but you do need a little bit of imagination, and you need to use that and connect what you hear with your life in order to make something better for your life. And that way it's not an instruction of any type. It's actually something that you go, okay, that's interesting, but in my situation that looks like this. That broadens your horizons and allows you to do something more with your life. And I've also heard about listeners who have changed their thinking about past events because they understood more about what a guest went through. So there's a particular story that I've heard that one guest that I had, knowing what they went through, helped another group of listeners in a very positive way. And I nearly teared up when I heard about that. That was really impressive.
That's pretty special. That's pretty special to have that effect on people.
Yes, absolutely. And I don't really have a huge number of episodes as we record this. This is about number 15 or something like that. But already, the podcast has had a positive impact on some people. So I'm really, really, really happy about that. And I've also had some feedback from another guest who found the interview process really helped them understand themselves better. That was really encouraging to hear as well.
That's a great positive start to your podcast, just getting those effects already and results already. Well done.
Yes. I mean, I'm hoping to do some good in the world, and I'm already hearing, stories where some good is being done.
So being a podcaster provides an opportunity to help people engage their thinking for good. And I think one of the positive things about that is because people are listening, they're then engaging a bit more of that imagination and visualization. They can envisage what a person might have gone through or what it takes. And that can help them see themselves doing those things too.
Yes. So you could do a blog, for example, where it's a written thing, and a blog you have to read, so you're totally limited to what that reading is. You can't really read and do other stuff at the same time. You do need to sit down. So that's a good thing about that. And it does engage your imagination pretty well.
Yes.
But it probably has less flexibility. When you go into audio-only recording, you then have the ability to be a bit more flexible, like you can drive while you listen, and that's how I tend to do it, but you can listen while you're doing other things. I'm not a multitasker. I can't listen to a podcast and edit something else. But I don't know that too many people who can. But when you listen to the audio, you also get the person's inflections in their voices and how they come across. They can actually expand on what it is that's being portrayed, and that enables and captures your imagination in a positive way. And when you go on and watch videos, people tend to just switch off. Everything's been delivered to them. They really don't need to engage at all. So try and stay away from video wherever possible.
Yeah, videos are very, it doesn't allow your imagination to grow at all, and you don't get that real sense of what the person goes through because you're not placing yourself in their shoes almost.
Yeah, yep. Unless you're looking at like a how-to video that shows you a practical technique or something like that, then the visuals make sense. But as soon as you go to a talking head, just don't watch it, just listen.
So after this break, let's look at the steps you took to become a podcaster. So Paul, how did you become a podcaster?
Well, the first thing was I had a reason and some motivation to do some good in the world, and also to generate some income, at least in the future, from the podcast. So it was quite important to actually understand that, I'm not just out there and, spruiking a particular point of view. There's all different sorts of podcast types. Like Forest.chat is an interview-based podcast. You can have a what you'd call a monologue, so an individual talking to the microphone and telling stories or providing opinions or a rundown on something. Or you can have a regular panel of people, so a number of people doing a podcast, and they talk amongst themselves, and they tend to be more on the entertaining side of things. And then what I've got is an interview podcast, so I'm getting in different people all the time and sharing those people's experiences and something about them with the audience. So, and I'm hoping that sharing allows people to do some good and get some good out of it. So I talked to a few people about what the podcast topic should be right at the beginning before I kicked everything off. And my first idea didn't fly. So I did have to get in and, I had the name at that point, and I needed to work out just how on earth I was going to engage an audience. And I think I've come up with the 3 themes that are reasonably universal and of interest to people. And I think the more people I talk to, the more variety there will be, and the more interest. Although there's a lot of there'll be a lot of different nuance in amongst that people can get a lot out of. So I had the name, the domain, the Forest.chat. So that became the name, and I put together all the branding. Once I that sort of all happened together. So understanding what it was going to be about and what it looked like, how it would flow. And then I had to research the setup and hosting of the communication platform. So for promotion strategy, I looked at doing things by word of mouth and by email, and that will grow more slowly than jumping onto something like Facebook and buying adverts and just getting the word out there. But just getting the word spread out there without any context is probably, like, it might hook a few people that actually are looking for what I'm providing, but it probably will inflate the numbers with a whole bundle of people that just are not engaged. And I didn't want that. I wanted people to engage with the podcast and understand that they were actually getting something out of it and listening to it and being involved because they wanted to be involved and it's what they're interested in. I then had to go out and invite some guests along. So I went through my contact list and thought about all the things that I know about the people in my contact lists and worked out who was in there that maybe was doing something a little bit interesting, a little bit different, or doing something that other people might want to do, or doing something that very few people actually get to do. So I went through my contact list and sort of put some topics against each person and then approached a number of people. So I approached Caroline here, who's actually the first episode released. Caroline was the guest on that episode. And then a number of other people have have got involved as guests, and it's been really, really good. And they've come from different areas of my life so far, and some people are out there introducing other people. So this week I've got an interview with someone who I've never personally met. I may possibly have heard them at some point, but I actually have very little understanding of who they are. But I know someone who introduced us.
That's great, and that's a good way of growing community and meeting and seeing another aspect of some people too. I'm sure some people are surprised about another side of people. We can so often get pigeonholed into a box of, oh, that person does this, or this person's great at their work. But seeing what they do in their outside life can be quite enlightening for people too.
Yes, I have interviewed people about things that, the group of people that I've been involved in, maybe know them for one thing, and I've interviewed them about something else in their life. So hopefully that helps to broaden their understanding of that individual as well. So I got in inviting guests for me. If you've got a different type of podcast, obviously, if you've got a regular panel, it's just about getting together. If you're doing it on your own, it's about having a content strategy and what you're going to talk about and so on. And then getting in and recording the interviews. So you actually got to make it happen. You can do it quite simply. You could do it on a phone if you're on your own and you're just doing your voice being recorded. Then you can just do it like talking on the telephone. It's as simple as that. There are apps to make that really, really easy. The tricky thing, of course, is coming up with the content. So you have to record the interviews. For me, it's recording interviews. I created 4 episodes and organised them to all be released at the same time. So this podcast launched with 4 episodes on the same day at the same time. I wanted to do that so that there was more than just a little snippet straight off the bat, and then I've been doing 1 a week from there. And that's a fairly punishing schedule, actually.
It's a lot to keep up with, isn't it? Because you always have to have that next person and that, next recording done and that next interview. And then you can have people who change their mind or people who have unexpected things come up. So it's, can be quite a challenge to get those podcasts out on time, can't it?
Yes. I'm finding that in order to have 1 interview a week, you probably need to have 2 or 3 people lined up at all times.
Yep.
And then it's just about keeping on going.
So being a podcaster, obviously publishing weekly can create quite a demanding schedule. Thank you for sharing your experience of being a podcaster, Paul. And from all of Forest.chat listeners, we wish you all the best in your future endeavours. And thank you for allowing me this opportunity to host this event today. It's been different being on the other side for me.
Both sides. Actually, I am interested. If anyone does want to actually be the interviewer, then I'm up for that. And who you interview, that could be up to you too. Be very interesting. I'd obviously need to be the producer of it and that sort of thing, but definitely up if someone wants to challenge their skills. If you think you can do a better job than I can, that's all great. No problem. I'm up for it.
And if you also think you've got something you would like to share about your life with other people, Paul would love to interview you. So please get in touch so that he can do that.
Yes, thank you, Caroline. So I hope our Forest.chat listeners this week can benefit from my experience of being a podcaster.
You've been listening to Forest.chat, where we talk about individual endeavours in West Australia, what it takes, what it means, and how you do it. I'm your host, Caroline Vandermeer, and today's episode we talked to Paul Vandermeer about being a podcaster. Remember, there are 4 ways you can get involved with Forest.chat. Share the domain Forest.chat with your friends and family and the people you meet. Listen to the published episodes at forest.chat/episodes. And remember, they're published Wednesdays. Book an interview at forest.chat/interviews. Or book an advert at forest.chat/adverts. I'm looking forward to joining you with our next interview. Until the next time, enjoy making it happen. And good luck with your adventures and what you do.